Hi, my name is Phil Wolfson. I am pleased to present to you the Dharma K retreat video, which comes out of a confluence of the spiritual, emotional, psychological, and psychedelic worlds that I and Ron Siegel and others have been inhabiting. We wanted to create a new kind of format so that it wasn't just for practitioners, but to expose people who are engaged in contemplative practices to the effects of a psychedelic experience using our legal psychedelic, ketamine, in formats that we feel give a sense of the possibility of mindfulness, of traveling, of journeying, of opening one's heart and mind to new experiences. And that's what we've done and plan to do again. So please welcome yourselves into Dharma K. It's a series of interviews, bits and pieces of our presentations. It doesn't include actual photos or videos of people under the experience because that is private and confidential. But it does include a lot of things that we hope you will find enlightening, interesting, absorbing, and bringing you into the nature of mind, heart, and spirit. In the great tradition of the indigenous peoples who crossed the Bering Straits or came from Polynesia, who in amazing 1,000 or 1,500 years populated these entire continents, north and south. In the spirit of all of those people who preceded us and from whom we learned, bring in the Great Spirit. So Great Spirit of the East, of arising, of giving nurture and development to us, of beginning. O Great Spirit of the East, begin with us, hold us in your bosom, advise us on our beginnings, make them great and good beginnings. O Great Spirit of the East, come into us and hold us in your embrace in this time of our being together. Of Dzogchen, of primordial awareness, of the center of our being from which all things flow. Great Spirit of the center, be with us on this journey. Hold us in your embrace. Hold us in our consciousness of you at the core of our being. Oh!
There seem to be a lot of synergies between what happens in exploring the heart and mind on ketamine and what happens in contemplative practice. At least from the point of view of, I would say, maybe Buddhist-flavored or mindfulness-flavored and compassion-flavored contemplative practice.
So we formed a program, and the program was probably in some ways the most intensive ketamine experience we could give to people because we were doing it in low, medium, higher dose, interspersed with Dharma talks and practices, yoga in the morning, all kinds of ways of aiding and abetting the transformation of our consciousness from start to end, even though many people came with very high levels of consciousness, virtually everyone. But we wanted to see, could the medicine, with its signature of moving people out of the here and now and into other realms, affect one's view of how you conducted your life, how your insides felt and worked, and then how you might explicate it to people on the outside.
So it's very fitting to have done pranayama practice before the practice that we'll be doing for the next half hour or so. Anapanasati is known as Buddhist pranayama. What I'd like to do is offer you a bus tour of some of the jhanas that can be available from practices of concentration. And so I'll do a little bit of a hybrid of Dharma talk and guided practice. So if it feels okay, I'll just invite you to take a position that feels relaxed but dignified. Often that might involve having your knees slightly below the levels of hips. And then like a stack of coins lining up your spine so that it is upright and relaxed. Sometimes it's nice to slightly separate the lips. And for eye gaze, some people may find that they go a bit deeper by having their eyes closed. But if eyes open as part of your practice, then by all means, pick a point a couple feet in front of you to rest the gaze upon. So to begin the practice of anapanasati, I'd like you to simply notice that your body has known exactly when and how much to breathe in and to breathe out this entire time. And so our only job is to know when the breath is coming in and when the breath is exiting.
I think it's been very beautiful to see how the first kind of reviews and the process itself has been beyond what I think we could have imagined. Just seeing how much the synergy between the two and how people who have a practice can really bring that knowledge, that wisdom, that capacity into the space, which then is deepened and enhanced by the different access one has from the medicines and the capacity to really navigate the internal landscape. And I think to really have these platforms of witness and the untangling that happens with ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. There's such an untangling internally and a freedom from the mind and from emotions and the streams of the soma, as well as even the noise of our nervous system. I think the medicine just really allows for an extension of that platform of witness. And so for those of us who have a practice, it's just such an amplification to have that extended by the medicine and such a respectful interplay.
5 days of a retreat have been profound for me, and the combination of using this medicine and combining it with spiritual practice and having it be so such a variety was really profound too. People were all offering different kinds of practices, from sky gazing to mindfulness to sensory sinking into one's sensory awareness, and it, to me, was just super profound.
One of the really clear crossovers that I saw many times and many other people during this exploration saw is the principle of letting go, moving toward and approaching with acceptance whatever is arising in consciousness, and trusting the process. Because you can really see quite clearly, we see this in meditation practice, that anytime we try to resist an object, anytime we try to hold on to a positive experience or push away a negative experience, we generate suffering for ourselves. We tend to get stuck in a state of aversion or a state of clinging, and it becomes abundantly and instantly clear under the influence of ketamine that it's a fool's errand, that there's no way to hold on to positive experiences. There's no way to push away negative experiences, and there's a kind of spontaneous delight that arises from relating to moment unfolding experience with that kind of acceptance. It's not unlike what happens on extensive meditation retreats, by which I mean a silent retreat extending over several days or longer, that initially there may be an attraction to certain states of mind, like, oh, I want to be present and concentrated so I can taste my food fully and enjoy the natural surroundings, and kind of attachment to that and a pushing away and not liking thoughts, and particularly the thoughts that have painful emotions associated with them. But over time, in a meditation retreat, we get at that, oh, well, we don't get to choose, right? We have to open to whatever is unfolding, and we realize that the point of the retreat and the practice isn't so much to stay with a particular state that I might think of as more awakened or saner or better, but rather to have openness to the fluidity of the experience. That seems crystal clear under the influence of ketamine, that is a more skillful way to work with what's arising in consciousness.
The things that work in therapy is when you walk to the door of the mystery and you stand there as they walk through and you're waiting for them when they return. And that's what psychedelics are. That's when you stand there with somebody in the therapeutic context when they walk in and they haven't taken any medicine. You know, they're going into the intensity of their lived experience of pain, of sorrow, and we don't know what the depth is or the exact character of it is, and we have to with humility stand there and wait for them to return from the intensity of the experience and wherever it takes them, and help them, you know, sort it out, but we're not giving them answers about it. We're helping them sort of contextualize and make sense of it as a gathering of lived experience.
My tendency is, I always am working on something, so I want to be constantly expanding self. And but sometimes the work it's rigorous because it's like re-networking something within me that's been networked over decades. And so the ability to get support with that re-networking almost lightens the load of it in my life.
It really is an honor to sit for someone, to be there, holding space for them. You know, you don't know what they're experiencing, so there's a lot of curiosity. It can be really meaningful to sit for someone.
You are bravely experimenting and adventuring to find your deeper sensitivity and to shut down temporarily the conceptual framework of how we are conditioned in this culture, which is a materialism-dominated culture, and you know what's realistic. In other words, how realistic is defined to us of the way we grow up, and so you temporarily don't have. You know, your brain will not temporarily produce this is this and this is that, and that's why you hallucinate, because your brain wants to recognize something that it's just raw experience, and then beauties emerge and amazing things, and because actually when we are just connecting to things, it's all wonderful, it's marvelous. It's fantastic. It's scary because we're educated to be scared of everything. That's how we're controlled, by being frightened of things, especially reality.
One of the realizations that I had this week around my own sadness and the sadness I carry inside me, you know, was that I've always felt a need somehow to understand it, to move it, to get to the bottom of it, to do something with it. And I think in, you know, my first medicine journey, I really was in that sadness. I was in very beautiful, verdant nature, but I was feeling very sad, and it occurred to me in that space about how sadness is part of the cycle of life, and that there's no happiness without sadness, and no sadness, because I also have huge joy inside me as well. And that we live in a culture now where we become allergic to sadness. And it's not that I wish people to be sad, but that we have become so sophisticated in using technology to try and run away from sadness to find happiness, that we are running faster and faster into sadness, into the very thing we're trying to avoid. And that was a very important learning lesson for me.
So if I bring all that stuff in at the beginning, whatever worries I'm having, problems with work, whatever, relationship, a ketamine experience, depending on dosage and sensitivity, will take me out of all that. So then I return basically refreshed and with a new mind. My mind is relaxed from its grasping. So ketamine's a great facilitator for non-attachment, non-dual, whatever you want to call it, Dzogchen, you know, primordial awareness, instant presence, all the names from it. And in fact, during the training, there were several of us who were Dzogchen practitioners, Dzogchen literally meaning something like the great perfection and it's a Tibetan practice of almost 1,000 years or more old. But it's an immediacy of letting go. And ketamine has that property as well. So ketamine's a great teacher of immediately letting go. For some people who are neophytes, that's very difficult and scary. So you go slow, and you, as we did with the low dose, moving up. So then the disorientation that occurs was you're letting go to varying degrees of being here. That disorientation becomes less problematic. You can enter the new realities that often occur with ketamine with less tension about them. And then you come back, so you're in a position to see, well, what are my first thoughts? How am I different? Who am I? And we, as doing integration, not so much here, which is an experiential program, not so much we're not analyzing each other, though we're doing bits of that. You come back, and in the work of the integration, of putting it together, of seeing what was most important to you, of seeing if there are themes or contacts or people you've seen who you really want to get with, or who you've lost and you have a time with them. Ketamine's a great seance vehicle. If William James had it during the time of the American Cyclical Society, they would have had great seances, because ketamine brings you into realms of people you've lost, and they seem real.
I found with the smaller dose that it was more interpersonal, more earthbound. And the medium dose integrated with my art practice. And the high dose, which I did with a small hit of vape cannabis, was very transcendent. I was really resting in the golden light, and it integrated my Buddhist practice of 35 years, Dzogchen Vajrayana. It integrated my practices with the medicine. I was deeply impressed with it as a medicine that integrates with your native spiritual system, coping mechanism, if you want to call it, or your faith, if you want to call it that. So for me, it was, I come from Dzogchen, and it's a lot about resting in the clear light, the Rigpa. And at the higher dose, I felt I'd had a very deep transmission. I felt the blessings of the lineage in this room. Here I worked with light dose 25, medium dose, moderate dose was 60 in my case, high dose was 85 in my case. And I found them each, there was something to learn from each of them. And of course the setting, the context of the people and what they're going through influences things. So a lot of it is like dreams, like Freud said about dreams. A lot of our dreams are deeply informed by recent and indifferent material. So what you do, I believe, for the hours prior to your journey is very important, the state of mind you get yourself into. And with my high dose, I went deep into my practice, did some prostrations, some yogas, some pranayama mantra, and then some clear light meditation, mainly guru yoga. It all goes back to devotion and clear light for me.
My ketamine experience took me into a very far away place. A place so far away that I think without ketamine it would have taken me centuries to get there and centuries to get back, and the ketamine took me there very, very quickly. And yet that place so far away was right here, right in this present moment. And it was a dismantling of my day-to-day reality. It was kind of like everything around me and in me was taken apart to a molecular level and reassembled in a way that was both very strange and yet completely recognizable. I almost felt like I was in some way being shown a key to the realities of our existence.
If you take my journey that just happened yesterday, I entered the formless realms. And the first time I ever did ketamine, I was in the formless realms, and I knew myself at that moment as pure energy. I could see myself as energy, I could see my colors, I could see the movement of my energy, and it had no form. It seemed like death. So to a lot of us, the end of form and into formlessness seems like a death, because there's no expression of a form of furniture, of your being, of something else. So yesterday I was in the formless space, and I'm used to it, I like it, because a lot of good things come out of the formless space. Tibetans are fond of saying, when you really are in emptiness, what arises is compassion. Well, for me, what was in the formless space was love.
Supposedly, Buddha means someone who awakens to and comes to know well what is real and distinguishes it from what is false. He's like the ultimate, or he or she, they're female ones, ultimate scientist, actually experiences the reality of things at all its different levels, the whole range of them. And what his teaching is also called the Dharma, because the teaching is what enables other people to come to that knowledge themselves and become more realistic. So in my one, for instance, slogan, what is Buddhism? It is realism. And that's why my recent book, which I commend to all of you, is Wisdom is Bliss. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance brings on suffering. Wisdom is bliss. All we need to do to realize all of this on the whole planet is educate everybody.
On a spiritual level, it connects me with myself in a way that is so intimate and so divine and so whole that it creates incredible self-compassion and self-love. And obviously, inner is outer, so that's self-compassion and self-love that I'm able to connect to then translates to, I think, my treatment of people and my ability to be compassionate and loving and kind with others.
Finding that by sinking in each moment more and more, I learned to make myself more increasingly at home in the universe, in relationship, with the community around me, and I became less and less afraid. And I think that that's the biggest lesson of this retreat and of the medicine in combination with contemplative practice is letting go of fixing things and just recognizing that I'm rolling with it with less and less judgment and more compassion for me and, you know, circumstances and other people, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'd like to share this invocation with you all. So we can begin by dropping inside to your own vibrant life force. And then to the vertical axis of your spine. Below you, calling on this great nurturing mother, on her web of life that we share in so abundantly. And above you, calling on the light-giving and life-giving rays of Father, Son, sourcing us all in countless ways. And we call on the loving energy and presence of Kuan Yin, Mother of Compassion, Tara in all her forms, and on all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Come, surround everyone in this room. Protect us and guide us with your compassion. We also call on the innate Buddha nature of each of us here, the inner wisdom and love that brought us here and that will guide us today. May each of us open our heart portal to the vast and sacred heart of the cosmos that courses within, through, and beyond us in all directions, serving as a beacon and resource to all. And we call on the lineages of sacred medicine workers who have tended souls for millennia. We honor and thank those ancestors and lineages who know and trust this medicine to lead us toward wholeness, toward our true nature. May their trust and understanding in the spirit realms invite greater surrender today. And let us call on the guides and ancestors of each of you here today. May these beloved ones surround you, protect you, and support you in navigating the inner terrain you came to explore. May you go where you need to go. May you see what you need to see. May you feel what you need to feel, and may you love what you need to love.
And so having a guide to orient you as to, and me, as to how I wish to proceed through life, it seems to me essential. And it seems to me essential that we deconstruct the nature of the guides that come at us, because they're a profusion. And if you think of the one central word that we came up to as a guide, and how its waves of color expand into every aspect of our being, that one word was kindness. Kindness is a guide, right? Because it makes you aware when you're unkind. It's dualistic, but it's also singular in the sense of the experience of kindness. Have I just been kind? Have I just taken up too much space? Have I said something where I should have been silent? Can I give where I think I can't? Can I share my space? Can I share my heart? So kindness as a guide kind of trumps any other complex guides.
In meditation and mindfulness practice, we're really trying to distill the different components of ourself. And ketamine just gives us an assist in that. So it's just very beautiful to marry the two modalities in a way that just enhances both of those practices separately.
I think that there's a natural connection between a shamanistic map and the medicines. And in the modern world, I think a person who is in touch with nature can usually get that metaphor of the tree, the sky, and the earth, or the wisdom and the compassion, and meeting together in the heart, resting in the heart.
There's a lot of discussion, particularly in philosophical circles, about whether that space, the Dzogchen space, the great perfection space, has a cultural aspect to it. And I've always thought maybe, but lately I'm thinking that it is universal to all beings, that the emptiness does not contain information of a cultural or transcultural nature. What becomes clear is that as you have thoughts and feelings and sensations that arise, those are cultural and transcultural, but that we can all hang out in that space and trust for each other that that space is a unification space of all beings. In the Tibetan way of seeing things, they divide it into view, path, and fruit. And they're all reciprocal. So the view is constantly being augmented or deleted or changed by the path. So tasting the fruit gives you knowledge to alter the view. The fruit itself, the realization where you are, in terms of your sense of balance, influences your sense of view. So when we make them separate as spirit or samsara or the rest, we're creating dualities that don't really exist. Because the question of how you live your life is the question of you and your experience on the path and what's occurred for you.
I'm not the first to say this, and I certainly won't be the last, but what's most important is your daily practice, your emptiness and compassion practices as creating a ground through which the ketamine can flourish and teach you more. You can't rely just on the ketamine. You need to have a sincere and heartfelt practice of some sort that works both with the ultimate transcendent, the universal, as well as the particular and the dirty daily of making a living and being with loved ones. And so those two come together, but don't rely just on the ketamine.
This is the wheel of well-being that I work with for myself first and foremost, and then I share it with others who are interested in going on this journey with me. And it's just a way of checking in every once in a while and seeing, where am I, right, in each of these different places? And if I'm finding that there's a place that's feeling undernourished, right, I pull out that list and I'll be adding from this list, right, and say, what might I do in one of those areas just to give me a little bit of a lift in that space? And I want to connect it, there we go, I'll just leave it on this one. I want to connect it back right to the work that we're here doing. And so as I connect it back to Ram Dass, and I think one of the things that feels really important to me in sort of the relationship that I had with him, both when he was here on Earth, but even more so in the relationship that I've been having with him since he dropped the body, is that so much of, I think, what he's becoming more known for once again, right, is all of the amazing work that he did in bringing psychedelics and bridging that with psychotherapy and all of the amazing history, right, that we have. And we have folks here who are part of living with that history. And I think what gets missed sometimes is all of the work that he did after that to show us what it's like to be on the mat on a daily basis, to access these different planes of experience that you can do in all of those ways that don't have to be through medicine. Right? And none of this is to say that there isn't a beautiful, wonderful space for medicine work. And did you hear how much of what we were doing to access these states of well-being were things that we do in our ordinary life?
Perhaps a deeper way to develop a practice to find these mysteries is how much of this knowledge that has been created in the great texts of all religions over the world resides in our own beings now. And it's so remarkable when I'm working with individuals that the downloads they get through deep contemplation, be it in silent retreats or from holotropic breath work or with ketamine-assisted psychotherapy and Dharma practice, how much the knowledge is actually within our own collective minds, in our bodies. And that to me is some of the most surprising things where, you know, it's always wonderful and humbling to see these great master teachers have so much knowledge to share, but sometimes when people just access this information through direct experience in their own beings, in their own minds, you know, where they become my teacher when I'm just serving them, to me that is the most remarkable, most humbling experience, but to recognize we all have this information within us.
Ron was saying the other day, after one of his experiences with the medicine, he said, I don't know if I feel a little bit guilty that I actually had this experience where I felt so amazingly good. And I said, isn't it sad that it's taken us so long to realize the healing possibility and potential of giving people the gift of awe, giving people the gift of putting their sights on a point on the horizon that's about re-engagement with the transpersonal, or the awesomeness of beauty and expansiveness, as opposed to all the small, literally, and you know, I know they don't feel like they're small, but the small ways that we've been wounded, and we, let's lock arms and say, cry together and say, yes, it was horrible, but then lift our eyes up together to the sky and say, how fucking amazing this is.
A lot of the wisdom of these traditions that have been really cultivated over millennia to have frameworks with which we can share it collectively and have a chance to try on different lenses, to see ourselves and see the world is so valuable. And in this collective space, just to have a sharing what people were offering, and just to sometimes try on because pieces resonate, or even when they don't resonate, to sharpen the lines really of our own frameworks with which we exist in, is so valuable. I think it just allows us to be much more aware of who we are as human beings, much more conscious of how we're choosing to live our lives or even create ourselves. So that's been another aspect that is really valuable, I think, about having medicine work with contemplation.
There's a way that learnings in therapy, because it's through this vehicle of talk, primarily of talk and conceptualization, cognitive framing and things like that, we miss all of these other aspects of connecting with the world and with our true circumstances in the world. And contemplative practices put us up against, or put us in the face of our true circumstances in a way that therapy at its best does, but lots of times we're too focused on, you know, what hurt you, and, you know, and how do you feel about them, and, you know, and how can you sort of vent out your experience of having that happened and things like that. And I think we miss the boat a lot in, you know, as therapists, focusing on trying to fix things as opposed to recognizing the inherent openness and beauty of life, and learning how the dropping away, or there's a natural sort of healing or receding of prominence and importance of those legitimately hurtful experiences, as you shift your attention to the amazement and awesomeness of life itself.
I think what has been particularly meaningful for me is the context, the holding space, the broader holding space of Menla, which feels like a very sacred, very safe space to be in. And then within that, the space created by the group, by Phil, by Ron, by KTC. And it's just been amazing to be able to journey in that space. It's really allowed me to venture far out and feel very safe to do so.
I think contemplative practices, you know, from different lineages, be it mindfulness, meditation, different forms of meditation, and psychedelic medicines when employed carefully as well, and sometimes when they're added. I think one of the most magnificent aspects of this work is that it allows us to expand our awareness, to not be living in these very small pockets that are really hardly tapping into our full potential, to have a sense of the beyond within ourselves and how little of ourselves that we use in everyday life. I think is one of the most powerful aspects, because it allows us to have reverence for life and reverence for the mystery of existence, and how it's available to us at any moment with simple practices, and how little we choose to notice or even be aware of the beauty of the complexity of our beings and our senses.
The open question is, and a vitally important one, is what are the sequelae going to be? You know, what's going to happen to each of us from these experiences? To what extent can we stay alive and keep center in our thoughts, feeling, and behavior some of the lessons, like the lesson of acceptance rather than clinging and clinging to pleasant things and pushing away unpleasant ones, and things like, you know, noticing the universality of love and compassion as a kind of ground.
My view of psychedelics and meditation is that not just ketamine, but psychedelics in general take us out of ordinary mind. And in doing so, we let go of our grasping on here and now, whether it's mushrooms, MDMA, which is not called a psychedelic, 5-MeO, ayahuasca, 2CB, I could go through the list. They tend to take us into spaces where our thematic material is less of interest to us. So interpretation is always the bugaboo of psychotherapists. They all want to tell you what your dreams are about, your journeys are about. They always got an interpretation, you know.
Interbeing. If you're a poet, you will see clearly that there's a cloud floating in the sheet of paper. Without a cloud, there will be no rain. Without rain, the trees cannot grow. And without trees, we cannot make paper. The cloud is essential for the paper to exist. If the cloud is not there, here, the sheet of paper cannot be here either. So we can say that the cloud and the paper inter-are. Inner being is a word that is not in the dictionary yet. But if we combine the prefix inner with the verb to be, we have a new verb, inner be. Without a cloud, we cannot have paper. So we can say that the cloud and the sheet of paper inter-are. If you look into this sheet of paper even more deeply, we can see the sunshine in it. If the sunshine is not there, the forest cannot grow. In fact, nothing can grow. Even we cannot grow without sunshine. And so, we know that the sunshine is also in the sheet of paper. The paper and the sunshine inter-are. And if we continue to look, we can see the logger who cut the tree and brought it to the mill to be transformed into paper. And we see that, and we see the wheat. We know the logger cannot exist without his daily bread. And therefore, the wheat that became his bread is also in the sheet of paper. And the logger's father and the mother are in it too. When we look in this way, we see that without all of these things, this sheet of paper cannot exist. Looking even more deeply, we can see we are in it too. This is not difficult to see, because when we look at the sheet of paper is a part of our perception. Your mind is in here, and mine is also. So we can say that everything is in here with this sheet of paper. You cannot point out to one thing that is not here, time, space. The earth, the rain, the minerals in the soil, the sunshine, the cloud, the river, the heat, everything coexist within this sheet of paper. That is why I think the word inner be should be in the dictionary. To be is to be interbe. You cannot just be by yourself alone. You have to interbe with every other thing. This sheet of paper is because everything else is. Suppose we try to return one of the elements to its source. Suppose we return the sunshine to the sun. Do you think that sheet of paper will be possible? No. Without sunshine, nothing can be. And if we return the logger to his mother, then we have no sheet of paper either. The fact is that this sheet of paper is made up only of non-paper elements. And if we return these non-paper elements to their source, then there can be no paper at all. Without non-paper elements, like mind, logger, sunshine, and so on, there will be no paper. As thin as this sheet of paper is, it contains everything in the universe in it.
The three strands of wisdom are a clear mind, an open heart, and present-centered attention. A clear mind links us to the creative power of consciousness and creates a flow of clarity and insight. An open heart feels the sanctity of everything and allows us to be charitable, compassionate, and kind to all living things. Present-centered attention enables us to see, understand, and respond to what's happening now, both inside and outside of ourselves. A person who braids each moment with these three strands of wisdom is a true knower and lover of silence.
When I was coming out of it, I think the thing that really struck me was the fungible nature of reality. That we live with many, many realities. And I was trying to reconcile that with this notion of some sort of universal reality. And that was a difficult thing. And I was really coming to the thought that the idea that there's a universal reality may be the idea that, you know, we think about as God is a delusion, it's wishful thinking. But having reflected a little bit more on that and my journey experiences, you know, in the past and yesterday, there is one reality that does actually thread through them all. And that's the reality of love. Love. The reality of love. And it's funny because, you know, there's the cliche, God is love. And, you know, I almost sort of recoil at that cliche because it's often, you know, it's associated with, you know, sort of fundamentalist, you know, thinking. But maybe that's what it is. Maybe the binding force, the force that ultimately is the universal force of the universe is love. Maybe that's how we have to see it, and that's the best that I can do from my very fragile, limited human brain today.